Would everyone please stand? The theme of finding one's natural voice can mean different things. Writers seek to find the voice that they write with. As humans, we seek to find how we believe in things, what we should say. I'm going to be a little more literal today and finding the natural voice that comes within your body. So be prepared to raise your arms, and so you might want to spread out and position yourself. So much about finding your voice is about breathing. Now, the fact that you're all here means that you know how to breathe. No, I should correct myself. It means that you are breathing. You may not know how to breathe because there are better ways of breathing than others. So what I would like for you to do is everyone, if you can, breathe in deeply through your nose and raise your hands. And then let it out. One more time. One more time. Now, remember when you go to the doctor and the doctor sticks that tongue depressor on and has you say, ah? That's what I would like for you to do when you exhale now. So let's take a deep breath in and then make that sound when you exhale. Let's do it again. Try to get it down low. You should be feeling something down in here. Where people's voices, certainly in Oklahoma, a lot of times it comes from up here, or the voice comes from the nose, and we think that is just fine. And then other times the voice can come from the throat, and all of the voice just comes from the throat, and it's not comfortable. And then there's other times when the voice can come from the upper chest. Your lungs have, two parts, and then some of it can come from the upper part. But then when you bring the voice down to your lower register, for your natural voice, it has more resonance. And certainly if you're talking on microphones, it always sounds better when you're using your natural voice here. So as we do some more breathing and you exhale with that sound, that ah sound, I want you to see just how deep you can make that go. Make your tummy should tingle. All right, let's take a deep breath in. One more time. Now, when you exhale this time, rather than say, ah, I want you to say, I like it here. I like it here. That felt good, right? Yeah. Let's do it one more time. I like it here. And so when you talk with your natural voice, first off, it's easier on your body. You have more breath control over your voice. Certainly if you're on stage or if you just want to be heard in a room, when you go to project, you have a lot more force behind your voice than if you're in your nose and you go, huh, or your throat going, ha. There's no breath support. So let's do one more time. I like it here. I like it here. Okay, that's good. That's good. Have a seat. That's our meditation for the day. Finding your natural voice. That is something that when I was a broadcasting student at UCO years and years ago, my professor would say, Lippert, from the gut. And I didn't know what he was talking about. That critique would come back time and time again, certainly in my broadcast announcing class, from the gut. But he never taught me how to do that. So I picked that up over the years and sort of made it my mission to get people to speak with a natural voice because it just sounds better. Anyway, that's me. Theater as a sanctuary. I don't need to tell you folks what a sanctuary means. We're in one right now. By definition, it's largely defined as a safe space, a place for refuge, a consecrated place. It doesn't necessarily have to be a place of worship from some organized religion. It can be any place that is sacred to you. That is your sanctuary. For me, going to the theater is my version of going to church. I find going to the theater comforting to me. Even if the play is disturbing, I still like the experience of going to that. The whole oral storytelling tradition goes back as far as the spoken word. When humans first started speaking to each other around campfires, they started telling stories. Certainly drawings on caves go back, thousands and thousands of years. The ancient Greeks brought us the foundation for the modern theater that we still enjoy today, the concept of the antagonist, the protagonist, the hero's quest, that kind of thing. And they also brought us the theater design. We're all familiar with proscenium theaters, maybe thrust, theater in the round, or theater in the square. As Max Bialystock said in The Producers, I invented theater in the square. Nobody had a good seat. And speaking of theater design, Carpenter Square Theater, as we've designed it, is what's referred to as an end stage. Not unlike a lot of traditional churches, in that we have the stage. If you're the audience, this would be the stage, and it comes to an end. Ours is about 7 inches tall, but it has an end to it. So it's referred to as an end stage. And then we have tiered seating that goes up for the audience. This focuses the audience's attention on what's going on stage, not unlike what you would see in a traditional church. You typically don't have churches, well, some churches today have that fan seating approach, where certainly the large mega churches have that, but the small community churches that probably many of you attended as youngsters was just that. It would have the altar, and then you sat in the pews behind it. Well, as Sarah mentioned in the introduction, and I have to thank Sarah for that introduction and acknowledge my longtime friend Connie Fawcett for roping me into this. Theater teaches us about the world around us, that we are not alone in the world, and it's kind of a temporary community, much like a church service is. Theater also shows us the bigger things in life, the bigger themes. It exposes us to concepts that we may not have considered before. It allows us, theater does, to connect with our fellow human beings, or becomings. I like that, human becomings. It certainly offers us new perspectives. I mentioned, attending a play that might be disturbing. Sometimes we see things on stage that are just outside our norm, and they are uncomfortable. But I think we need to encounter those uncomfortable truths that others experience so that we can figure out how we're going to respond to it. Theater also helps us grow as individuals and gives us a chance to get to know ourselves better. And that's kind of how I view the role of typical or traditional churches. Live theater. I will ask you in a little bit for a show of hands about your experiences with live theater, but I think it promotes social discourse and dialogue, and it has the potential for social change. The one that comes to mind most recently is the musical Hamilton. I mean, who would have thought that musical could have had the effect on the world that it has had? That is, one of the positive changes that theater can bring about. It's a cultural phenomenon that demands that society examines itself in the mirror. Sometimes we don't like what we see, so we either accept it or decide to change it. We study societal problems and attempt to find those solutions. And we come together as a community to listen to opposing points of view. And I think that's really important. We also use theater, much like all entertainment, to escape reality. I mean, for decades, not so much anymore, but soap operas were so popular. And I remember asking my mother, she didn't watch them so much, my grandmother watched them every day. And she started listening to them she was listening to them on the radio when I first became, they were her stories. Every day I couldn't bother grandma, for certain hours because she's listening to her stories. And then as I got older, then TV soap operas were there, and I would ask my mom, why are these so popular? And the answer was because the lives of those people on TV are worse than the lives of the people watching them. and so I guess we find comfort in knowing that at least I'm not doing that. The theater also lets us examine the unimaginable. Oh gosh, okay, so you can imagine the unimaginable. It gives us a chance to get away from our problems, to escape that reality, to take that 2-hour vacation and forget about the woes that we have back home. One of the things I really love about the theater is that it is immediate. I mean, it's not like watching a movie, and I've spent 45 years, almost 50 years in the media production industry. So I've documented lots of plays and performances, and I can also tell you that, in my estimation, about 30% of the energy of a live performance is lost when it's recorded. So if you just say, well, I'll watch the video when it comes out. I won't go to the play. I'll watch the video. It's not the same thing. These guys, yeah. I mean, there is just nothing like the energy that comes from a live performance. And as much as anything, the script will be the same every night, assuming the actors don't change it, which is why I'm not on stage much anymore. It's just the little gray cells are fading into white. But while the script may be the same, the experience is unique for each performance. How actors are interacting with one another, yeah. How the actors are interacting with one another gives that theater experience a unique quality that will not be duplicated. So when you're sitting in the audience, when I'm sitting in the audience of a play, I know that I'm seeing something very ephemeral. It's going away. When the quote curtain comes down, which by the way, Carpenter Square won't have a curtain because we don't have a proscenium. When the lights fade, the show's over, and that show will never be repeated again. It is fleeting. It's very temporary, but yet it can still have profound resonance on our soul. There's a quote that I found from someone that talks about this, that live theater is truly the greatest sustenance for the human spirit and perhaps for our collective spirits as humans on this crazy planet. Where else can 20, 50, or 500 or more people sit together, heartbeats synchronized, which actually happens, breathing the same air and sharing a one-time only experience? And I've read several places where studies have shown that audiences' heartbeats do synchronize during a performance, and that's how everyone has, this immediate response when something startling happens on stage, because we're all in sync with one another. And speaking of breathing the same air, I want to talk more about Carpenter Square Theater now, because this renovation project has been going on for now 3 years, give or take, more give than not. And it started with us finding a place, which took us a year to find the place. We knew we had to move, and we looked at a lot of places. Every place we looked at wanted a 1, maybe 2-year lease that in the space would have required a lot of renovation. And that was just too much work to do for some place that we might have to move out of in a year or two. So we found a warehouse near downtown Oklahoma City at the corner of Reno and Western. If you're familiar with the area, it's kind of diagonally across from the Farmers Public Market. It's not a really great part of town right now. But that has been our history. Wherever we were was not in a good part of town. And then the area would grow up around us, and we would be priced out of the area. And so we've moved a half a dozen times in our 38 years. And so we found this warehouse, and the landlord gave us a 10-year lease with a first option to buy if he wants to sell. And my goal is to have him actually bequeath the building to us. Yeah, and he hasn't said no when I brought that up to him. I know there are dangers there's a danger in once that happens, facilitating that demise of the landlord, but we won't go there. I'm not built that way. But we do have this basically it was the 12,000 square feet included 1,000 square feet of offices at the front of the building. It was originally used to sell candy, and it was a wholesaler for candy and cigarettes to stores. And that company moved out after a few. It was built in 1946. And they moved out in the early 50s, sold the building, and then it became stuff for automotive purposes and rebuilding brakes and clutches. And more recently, when we moved in, it was housing impounded vehicles. And so we did a major cleanup, pressure washing the thing from top to bottom, acid washing, deep cleaning the floor. No, thank you. And then laying out everything, drawing the plan. So we had 11,000 square feet of actual just open floor space. So we've designed everything from the ground up and put the walls where we needed to. Had to cut the floor in and put in new sewer lines. One quick thing, as we were installing the new part of the sewer. Before we got to the back of the building, the sewer line goes out to the alley in the back. I wanted to run a camera, so I had the plumbers run a camera down the sewer line, and there's a big block wall that separates the two halves of the warehouse, and there's a pass-through where heavy vehicles had gone through at one point, and where that happened, when the camera got there, it found a break in the sewer line, and from that point north to the alley, the sewer line was filled full of cobwebs and spiders and insects. Nothing had flowed through that sewer line for decades. We have no idea. So it's all a new sewer line now. Just one of the expenses we didn't, expect to undertake. We've encountered a lot of that. But I started on this by talking about the air that we breathe, the common air that everybody breathes. So I'm building this, we're laying all this stuff during the early days of the pandemic and trying to find plumbers to work and show up, and was a challenge in itself. But as we got the place planned and laid out, I was having to think 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. So I'm thinking about the air quality. And so I started reading about the indoor air quality in the post-COVID era. And the experts at that time were saying, bring the air in low and take it out high. So in our theater, if this is the stage and you're the audience and each row is on a tier that is almost 5 feet wide, so there's plenty of leg room, there are floor vents along the floor behind each row of seats. So the air, we have a total of 50 floor vents, bringing, like in your home, if you have that, bringing the air in from underneath, and then the returns are at the back of the house, way up high. So as you would exhale, it would then be sucked up and taken out and exhausted. And I have the units set. We have 3 units for the house and 1 for the stage and dressing room. They're all set to use maximum fresh air and minimum recirculation. And then what is recirculated will go through MERV 13 filters. That was the best I could go. But so we've paid a lot of attention to indoor air quality. I mentioned the leg room. I wanted to get 6 feet. That 2 years ago when it was saying, stay 6 feet apart. I don't know where they pulled that number out of the air, why that was the magic number. I was trying to get 6 feet deep on each tier, but the sight lines wouldn't allow us to do that. We just didn't have the space in order to do that, so we ended up with 5. But that does give us plenty of room for the air vents behind the seats, a lot of leg room, and in front of each row, a drink rail. So there's a little 4-inch wide shelf that runs the entire length of the house for the drink rail. And under that drink rail, in front of every seat, is a purse hook. And actually, it was a man who came up with that idea. So we think that's pretty much it for the house, except for my pet peeve, which was going to theaters that had one crappy little speaker on one side of the stage and all of the sound, whatever the sound was in the show, coming out of one crappy little speaker upstage right. And so in my theater, we're going to have cinematic style 8-channel surround sound. So we'll have 2 speakers on each side, 2 speakers in the back, and then speaker jacks backstage, so we can put a speaker anywhere we need to within the set. So if sound needs to come out of a TV or something, it can really come out of that. So that's my thing, and I got a lot of pushback on that. But I said, I'm the one raising money, so if you want to find money for a crappy sound system, go for it. We will have all of our ticketing will be online. So we're trying to make everything as touchless as possible. The restrooms have touchless toilets. And one thing I got no pushback on was the 4th stall in the ladies' room. So touchless toilets, touchless faucets, towel dispensers, and all of that. We will also have our art gallery. We typically have an art gallery and we sell art. Our first exhibitor, our first artist will be Suzanne Mears, and we'll also have a full-service bar. This building gives us our on-site storage for props and costumes and set pieces. We have an on-site scene shop, a 900 square foot rehearsal studio and dressing room for 12 makeup stations, and with a full cast bath. And everything's ADA compatible. I've learned more about ADA rules and regulations. I've now learned more about OSHA regulations than I ever cared to. That's our bugaboo right now. We have the roof is 25 feet. It's a barrel roof, 25 feet high, and our HVAC contractor hired some welders to build a ladder to get up there through the hatch that we put in, and nothing about it was OSHA certified. So now we're having to redo all of that, and that was something we hadn't planned on. We thought we were going to be open last weekend, back in the summer. We really thought we would be opening mid-October. Now I'm just trying to get us open. I'm trying to get the certificate of occupancy by the end of this year. That's my new goal. But that's the update on what we're doing at Carpenter Square Theater. Now, show of hands, how many of you have been to a play that moved you? Okay. Does anyone care to share? Yes.
Should I stand up?
Yeah, why don't you?
I'm Susan.
And use your natural voice.
Okay, I'll try, but I'm kind of tired.
You're doing good.
I grew up in Washington State. I'm Louisiana, originally born there. And as a young person, my father was in service, but we moved back to Whitby when we would go away for a while. We went to Japan for years and came back. But my friend worked in local theater in Oak Harbor, Washington. And one of the first theater productions I saw that truly moved me to tears was Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay. Who knew Jesus could sing so well?
Yeah, and then also I remember that same group, and one of my dear, she's my best friend, really, but it goes back the furthest for me. Also, they did Good Robin, another one that
Yeah.
really moved me.
Great play.
Beautiful, yeah. So, and then there are others. I don't get to the theater as much as I'd like, but I love it. So I agree with everything you said about the experience of it and what we can learn about ourselves by attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share anything? Yes, ma'am.
When my oldest son was a senior in high school, we went to see Phantom of the Opera. We sat on the back row and we both had our glasses.
Right?
And we were both mesmerized.
Yeah. Tremendous show. Anyone else have a moving experience in the theater? Oh, yes.
I have played in pit orchestras for operas and musicals and that kind of thing. I can't say that I was like blown away. It was like hard work. 8 hours of rehearsal and all that. Just had an absolute blast. I was really genuinely sad every time we wrapped up and that kind of thing. Because it's kind of like what you're saying. It's the same script and all that, but something doesn't go quite right, and then the actors have to kind of have some wiggle room and get through that. And then there were a lot of pranks. Like, so we got a pornography magazine and cut out clips of it that we put in the score of our conductor. So he's sitting there conducting it, he turns it, and we almost fell apart laughing. It was the best camaraderie. It was so much fun, really hard work, but just some of the funnest things I've ever done.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
A couple of weeks ago, OU's theater, inclusive theater of the Great Comet of 1812 is spectacular.
Oh, good.
Absolutely spectacular immersive theater.
Oh, can I say one other?
Yes, you can.
I forgot about the most profound, and that was Ashland, Oregon.
Which one?
Ashland, Oregon, the Shakespearean theater.
Oh, yes. I have some friends that live up there.
That was the first time that I thought I could be an actress. And I've not been an actress. I've never done anything like that, really in school or anything. But when I saw that Shakespearean play, and I can't tell you the name of it right now, but I know it was a powerful movie. I was in my early 20s, so looking for a career path. It didn't follow that way, went into banking. But anyway, have always had a yearning for the theater. So that was a cool experience.
Yes, ma'am.
It wasn't something I saw, but I'm a retired English teacher, taught in Germany, was happy that they had that experience, because their parents were downrange, which was the euphemism for it also.
Great. Sitting in a circle that you mentioned also ties in with what you were talking about, hijinks. This wasn't intentional hijinks, but I was in a play with a guy at Jewel Box Theater, and you know, the Egg Church was torn down a few weeks ago, very, very sadly. There was even someone who had the foundation money in hand and the appointment to go buy that church at 10 o'clock that morning, and the bulldozers showed up at 8 and tore the place down. Just, oh gosh. But this friend of mine I was in a play with at the Jewel Box Theater, which was a little theater in the round, and they're tearing that building down on Tuesday morning. Anyway, this didn't happen in my play, but he told me the story that he had, in the second act, he had to go over to a table and pick up a bowl of nuts and eat a nut, and his line had something to do with the nuts he's eating out of this bowl. And because it's in the round and the audience is closer than this, he goes over, it's like opening scene of the second act, and he goes over to the table to pick up this bowl of nuts, and he sees this guy in the front row going, I forget what he said, how he improvised to get back on track, but that's the kind of thing that happens in live theater. Anyway, I've exceeded my time now. Thank you very much for indulging me. I really appreciate it. Come, when Carpenter Square opens, please come and enjoy live theater. And when you go into any theater, take a moment and savor it's called warming the stage, the lights that they put on the stage, and think of it as a sanctuary. Thank you.